All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Overcome and Become podcast. With me, as always, is my kind co-host, Humberto Kaufman, and his incredibly slick back hair today, who will be joining us. And Humberto, how are you? I know I got to show off mine too.
Yeah, you gotta show it off. I am very well, sir. How are you? How do you feel?
I'm good, man. I'm good. You know what? It's funny. I had a friend of mine who is also getting haircuts who actually made a good point. He's like, what has the world come to? That illegal haircuts is like the biggest flex right now. Like, if you can get a fucking nice haircut during COVID, you're the fucking man.
It's pretty ridiculous, man. And I think it's still a little confusing as to what is allowed and what's not, because you're provided with guidelines, and a lot of these, they can become a little seemingly ambiguous or unclear, like, does this fall under this category that is allowed? Does this fall in the category that is not allowed, right? So I think people are just doing what they can to kind of keep creating some income.
I think at this point, if it was me, I'd just be kind of doing whatever the fuck I wanted, because everything is so vague. You think about things and it's like, well, we strongly encourage you not to do this. Then someone goes, so you're saying there's a stay-at-home order? No, we didn't say that. We're just saying we advise you not to, but you probably shouldn't.
By now, you can kind of tell where it's going truly, or what is their stance, depending on how they word it. If it's like some sort of wording in along the lines of it's absolutely prohibited or whatever, then okay, it's pretty serious. But if it's like, we advise you strongly against the following, it's like, nah.
You're like, no one's actually gonna give you a ticket for that. You might get a stern talking to, but no one's gonna say, fuck you, here, pay $1,200.
Like, can I go to jail for that? If the answer is no, we're good to go.
I'd be like, I've been to jail, and you're not gonna send me there for something like that. I'll be like, try again, because I know they're full right now.
You're like, I've been there. That doesn't scare me.
It doesn't scare me, muchacho. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, so the topic of today, getting past all the jokes, is we want to get into how to be prepared for preparation for prep, but in the financial aspect. And we want to cover two different bases. We want to cover the basis of being prepared for a prep, both natural and enhanced, with the gyms open, or kind of like right now in our province, being prepared for a prep financially with the gyms closed and still having the things you need at home.
Mm-hmm.
So if I were to say from like the competitive perspective, I look at it and I go, just touching on being enhanced. If you are enhanced, one of the biggest pieces of advice that I can give you, if you're not making that much money, is you need to really save funds. You need to save some funds for the simple fact that you have to realize whether it's a 16-week prep, a 12-week prep, a 20-week prep, or 24-week prep, 9 times out of 10, you start with your basis of a protocol, which is like testosterone and ethate and one other compound. And then as every 4-week period goes by, you might increase, decrease, or add something, right? So you really have to look at it like, okay, how much money am I going to need? By the way, this is not us advising you on what to use or what not to use, but how much money am I going to need? And from that, what could the changes be throughout? So I always look at it like, from last prep to this prep, I look at it and I go, okay, no matter what, I'm going to need at least like $2,000, give or take, with the changes that could happen here and there and running through certain things. Now you got to break it down. Food costs as well. If it's me thinking out loud based off my diet, I'm spending anywhere from $200 to $250 a week based off your proteins, where you shop, your chicken, your white fish, and of course your fresh vegetables, unless you buy frozen. I don't know if you're fucking crazy or not. I don't, but that's just me. Humberto, do you want to give your 2 cents on this?
Yeah, there are many factors that need to be taken into consideration when it comes to budgeting. I like that we actually started with one of the most important parts, which is the nutrition aspect, right? So within this aspect of the topic, there's going to be a lot of variables to take into consideration as well. One of them is going to be your, whether you have dietary restrictions, or you subscribe primarily to a specific type of diet, or you have dietary preferences, such as whether you're a vegan or or you're perfectly fine with eating all kinds of meat, or do you just prefer certain kinds of meat, that is going to affect the budget as well. Of course, chicken, steak, that is going to be quite expensive. Those are some of the most expensive protein sources that you can get. The carbohydrate sources generally are a little bit cheaper, and it depends how fancy you get when it comes to the carb sources, whether it's avocados, vegetable oils are really not that expensive, but other things like depends on what type of butter you incorporate in your diet, for example, as a fat source. Something like my personal favorite is cashew butter. So that one is a little bit more expensive. I just really enjoy how it tastes and how smooth it is. So that that obviously drives the cost up a little bit. So it also depends on how much variety you're going to give your diet. It depends, of course, on if you're being coached by someone, then you're bound to the food sources that they are providing. Now, I don't believe that there's only one way of attaining a specific goal. Like what I mean is the variety versus monotony aspect, right? I have done both. I have done preps in which my nutrition approach is very monotonous. It's very simple because the way I see it is easier to cook, easier to prep. You spend less time on that. There's less things that you have to get that could potentially drive the cost down a little bit. However, in some cases, eating the same things over and over for extended periods of time could create some digestion issues for some people. Which is why, if that is the case, then I would suggest against too much monotony and giving it a little bit more variety. I found that I felt the best when I give my body as much variety from every single source, whether it's protein, carbs, or fats, as possible. Now, this is going to drive the cost up a little bit. It also depends on how strategic and smart you are. Where you get your stuff from. If you get it in bulk, of course, it's going to be cheaper per gram or kilo or pound. If you go to the type of store that is just known to have costs a little bit more, if you go to like smaller type of store, for example, that is normally going to entail higher costs. So it depends on where you buy it as well. So those are things that you have to consider as well. All in all, the point is that you have to plan a lot. You have to be very specific and strategic when it comes to that. If budget is a potential issue, bodybuilding is an expensive sport as well, because as we have just discussed, the nutrition is going to be something that is going to potentially become pretty expensive. Then you have the supplements, then you have the AAS or your enhancements, let's just call it that. And then you have, if you have a coach, then there's a coaching fee, whether it's upfront, whether it's month to month, weekly, whatever, however it is that he works it out to be. Now, during lockdown, of course, the gym membership that would normally be a cost in a prep is something that you're going to not be having to incur. That's an expense that is going to be non-present until the lockdown is not the case anymore. So that's something of COVID versus non-COVID situation to consider as well. But now if you don't have access to a gym, then you may have to get a few things to kind of train at home and at least get by and just to ensure that your training doesn't suffer, right? And it depends on how much you're willing to invest.
Okay, so let's make it as cost efficient as possible. Let's talk about, for me, in my opinion, I think the average person, to really be able to afford a prep and to do it without struggling financially, or to penny pinch everything to be able to afford your diet, your protocol if you're on one, your coach, and let's call it a gym membership if we're talking about if the gyms are open. How much money does somebody have to make annually to really be able to afford it? But if it's me, I'm guessing you got to make at least $50K a year to really be able to actually do it properly, because you got to factor in everything else, your cost of living, your car expenses, whatever.
So put it this way, which type of athlete within competitive bodybuilding would be the most expensive? A male bodybuilder. So that involves more food, which means per week, that is going to get pretty expensive. If you are utilizing enhancements, that supplement protocol is going to, depends on the length of the prep as well, but if you are a heavier bodybuilder, you're going to likely require higher dosages than someone that is 175 or under, or if you're a female that is using enhancements as well, right? females, the supplements in this regard gets really, really non-expensive in comparison to the guys, because of the dosages they have to do is just so much
small.
more. It's incredibly small, as they should be,
Yeah.
in comparison to the guys. If you have a very high-profile, high-level coach, that is going to be another pretty big expense. I have been coached by very good, well-renowned coaches in the past, including last year. I was coached by Patrick Tour, and he's not cheap at all. And the diet and the supplement protocol he had me on was not cheap either. So it depends on also what is your goal, how far you want to take it in the sport, how much you're willing to invest in it, right? Because if you are a novice competitor that is just trying to see whether this is for them or not, if you're still kind of like on the fence, I would think that you wouldn't really necessarily go all out with the investment, and you'll be a little bit more cost efficient, and then you might cut a little bit of corners in that regard when it comes to this. Right now, if you're someone that wants to just absolutely demolish the competition from a beginning, or at least do as much as possible to get perhaps an overall in your first competition, you're really trying to go all out, this is probably something that is going to persuade you to invest a little bit more when it comes to nutrition, to who you're hiring for as a coach, even if it's your first show. If there's no gym access, then you might be more willing to get equipment, because this is that much more important to you.
Okay, so hold on. The average male bodybuilder that you envision, how much realistically do they need to pull in net every month, in your experience, to be able to really afford a prep for, let's say you're shooting for an overall at a regional, or you're trying to actually be competitive at national? What does somebody need to earn to be able to actually do it with the gyms open, not working out at home?
We're talking about a heavy male enhanced competitor.
Heavy male enhanced. What do they need to bring home to be able to do that?
Okay, so you're talking about, let's say, conservatively, $250 in a diet a week. So that's $1,000 a month. You're talking about, it depends on how heavy the cycle is, but you're probably talking about what, 500 to 750 a month in that cycle. Yeah, the protocol, 750, let's say. So that's 1750. Then add the supplements, depending on how heavy that is too, between the minerals, vitamins, and all of the supplements, another 300 at least a month. Depends on how, whether you get discounts, whether you have a supplement hookup or whatever.
Sure, yeah.
So you're already talking about over $2,000 there. Gym membership, another 50. I mean,
coaching.
The coaching, it depends whether it's upfront or whether it's monthly. Some coaches are $500, $600, $700 a month if you're going really high level, right? So you're talking about $3,000 in your regular expenses prep related. If this is not the case for absolutely everyone. There's certain things to be taken into consideration, as it is the case in the female competitor aspect, because those things like their suit, that is pretty expensive in comparison to the guys, for example. So that's something that offsets it.
That's a massive difference right there, because classic physique trunks, most expensive we're gonna get is maybe 70 or 100, depending who makes them.
Oh my gosh, mine are $50, and that's
mine were 52. But I'm just saying, some people get a little crazy, they pre-order special and whatever. But the female suit can be anywhere from 300 plus and way up, right? So
oh man, you've had $1,500, freaking $2,000. If they're really bedazzled, they're going to get pretty high up there.
Well, that's the thing. Okay, so let's be more direct with this, because we're just throwing statistics right now from personal experience.
It's just because I don't have a straight answer, and I don't want to limit people to be like, oh shit, if I don't make this money, I'm fucked.
Okay. Bring it back down. From your personal opinion from last prep, getting coached by Patrick, and your food costs and your protocol, what did you roughly spend? It's just a guesstimate, because you had a high level coach. So what did you roughly spend? Don't break down in detail.
I didn't keep track of it. That's the thing, right? I could just come up with a number, but it could be pretty far off, because I'm fortunate enough to not have to worry about that. So I just do whatever I need.
It's just a guess. It's just a guess.
Oh my gosh, I could be way off the mark. I'm trying to.
You're such a cunt sometimes. I'm literally just asking you for a guess. It's like that scene from The Notebook. It's like, what do you want? It's not that easy. Motherfucker, it is that easy. It's like, guess. It's called.
No, it's not easy at all. This is a very, very, very hard question, man. I'm gonna say, based on what I told you, I'm gonna say the 3,000 to 4,000.
Okay, great. That's fantastic. 3 to 4K. So if somebody decides, let's say right now while we're on COVID, they need a second job, I would gladly hire them. You need a second job and you don't care what that job is, shoot me your resume. I'll hire you on the spot. You might fucking hate the job, but you can use the income to save for your next prep. Bam, there you go. No, 3 to 4K, actually that sounds
now that the commercial is over, let's continue with the podcast.
You're such a dick. My point that I'm trying to say is sometimes it's easier to go into it and just pay for everything all up front. Now, I've never done that. I wish I could, but I've never done it.
And it depends also in your the spending habits and what your financial approach has been altogether. Because some people have a cushion that they can really, call on when it comes to this, right? Some people perhaps have already pre-budgeted in order for them to not to be, because if you're someone that's kind of like living paycheck to paycheck and kind of like struggling, you're going to have a hard time. I'm not saying it cannot happen, but you're going to be really stressing, and stress is something that you want to lessen as much as possible when you are prepping, because we know that can affect everything. It affects your mindset, it affects your training, it affects your look, and it affects how your body digests and responds to absolutely everything. So for the people, perhaps listening right now and perhaps are considering getting into the competitive world, don't let these numbers scare you. It's just a rough estimate for someone. Then again, we're overestimating in the hopes that you have a good idea, or as close as an idea, if you fall within these demographics. If you're a large bodybuilder, is really trying to go far in the sport and wants to become a professional and literally bodybuild for a living, these are the expenses that you're going to likely be facing down the road, and maybe right from the beginning. Now, if you're someone that is just doing it for fun and like a female doing their first bikini competition, don't disregard these numbers. You're not going to get probably not even to half of them. There's quite a range depending on the situation, but the point is that you perhaps overestimate. So when you're faced with the actual expenses, you're not freaking the hell out.
There you go. Okay. About 5,500, 6,000 last year. That's roughly what I've spent, I think, between the coaching, the food, the supplements, and the protocol. And that was with having like a supplement sponsor and getting shit. The reason why it was so much was actually because it kept getting prolonged over and over. If it wasn't that prolonged, it wouldn't have been that much.
That's right.
But that's because it went from being whatever it initially was, 20 weeks, until I stopped keeping track.
I know you and I started working towards. We started it. Well, we restarted in January because you took a little bit of a break. Remember? Because we started it was like 55 weeks out, and I remember I put it in the program just to kind of make fun of it. Yeah. You were like 55 weeks out from the 2020 Van Dyke, when it was supposed to be in May, but then it moved from May to September, from September to October. Speaking of which, we just heard that
you have like the sickest smile on your face about to say it.
I'm not. No, this is serious matter, of course, but unfortunately, the Van Dyke has been pushed to September. So the Van Dyke is a regional event. The regional event where we're from, in the province of Manitoba in Canada. That is the main. It has two parts: one natural and one open. Two shows, one natural and one open, and it was scheduled to take place July 18. It has now pushed, unfortunately, it was now pushed to October 30th due to due to reasons out of the promoter's control, of course, which being the lockdown, most people not really having access to enough equipment to train. Some of them have become creative or have made a point of getting enough equipment to get by with the training, but I'm not entirely sure what is the percentage of the people that were not as many. I would say 40% tops. I don't think, so as a promoter, they have to think about the bigger picture. And yes, it's unfortunate for the people that were very serious about their prep, and they were prepping for a while, and they maybe even invested to get some equipment, and now it's still getting postponed. But again, it's something that it has haunted us for the last couple of years. And as we were just talking about, in your case, that was the situation as well last year, where it got moved many times.
Canceled, finally happened.
Yeah.
But by the end of it, I think most people are just like, if it happens, it happens. But okay. But yeah, that's exactly why the budget was so much. You dragged that commercial for the VDC on so long just now.
Okay.
Let me shamelessly promote the Van Dyke Classic.
That's not my show, so I'm not promoting anything.
Fuck off. Anyways, what I was getting to though, since you brought it up, I'm gonna say it's less than that. I'm gonna say like maybe 10 or 15% of the people that were planning to compete actually have stuff at home to keep progressing. Okay, let's get into how much should you spend to have the things you need at home. Ideally, you want something for cardio, but you could do your cardio outside if you're a psychopath. But you want something for cardio, you want a squat rack, you want a bar, and you want some weights essentially to be able to do the bare minimum and a bench, right?
It would depend on the category. It would depend on what's the priority when it comes to muscle development, right? So that is going to determine, for example, if you are a bikini competitor, a greater amount of investment is going to go towards bands and things that, you still need weight, of course, but bands are not something that, I'm talking about loop bands, the ones that go around the knees.
Yeah.
That is not necessarily something that, a male bodybuilder is going to be investing in. So it depends on what's the category, depends on what is the need for heavier weight. If you can get by with perhaps adjustable dumbbells that go up to 30 pounds, 35 pounds, then great, because you don't really have to invest as much. If 35 pounds is really not, you can still engage and stimulate the muscle somewhat somehow with that kind of weight, but after a few weeks, the body is going to start to respond to the lesser stimulus and is going to start to lose size. Now, if that's around the way that you were kind of used to and you don't need that much more weight, then you're probably going to be able to get by with that type of equipment for a little bit longer. So it really depends on the situation, but yeah, on the category and the situation. Yeah.
Does that mean? Go ahead.
For me, a classic physique competitor that was prepping last year, I slowly, all the way from March last year, as soon as the first lockdown happened, my wife and I started, it was actually mostly her idea. I think I was in denial a little bit, I think, and I was just gonna get like a few things, and she basically made me realize that we didn't really know how long this was gonna go for. So we got as much as we could, and the basics that the very first couple of things that I got were a barbell, which was it was an Olympic barbell, but one of the ones that are like 20 pounds in weight. They're not as long, they can't take as much weight, a couple of 45 pounds, and I had some bands. That was about it. And then we started getting a power rack, a bench, and a couple other things, right? For the first 2 to 4 weeks with the minimum equipment I could get by. Luckily, I was able to get creative enough, and with the knowledge that I possess when it comes to training, I was able to get pretty decent workouts. And that's another thing too, because you're limited not necessarily only by the equipment, but also by the knowledge that you possess. If you don't really know, how to, the basics of the movement that is going to make you engage X muscle, like once you learn that, then you can get more creative, and it doesn't really become a matter of, I'm limited to thinking about exercises. Then you become more aware of thinking about the movement or the actual position of your body and the angles rather than the exercise itself. So for example, like, if you're used to doing flat barbell press for chest, right? And you don't have access to that, you shouldn't be thinking about that exercise per se. You should be thinking about what is your body doing in that exercise to engage those muscles, right? Which is a specific motion. So that can be applicable to every single muscle group. A muscle group that gives most people a hard time with limited equipment is quads, because quads are very big muscle group. They're very strong, so it requires, generally speaking, quite a bit of load. So if you have only like, a couple dumbbells that are 35 pounds, it's like, okay, you can still do it. Like, do a lot of things with a couple of 35 pounds, but it depends on what is your limitation when it comes to awareness of the options. And that is where a coach comes in, or you do an extensive research, but most people don't want to do it.
Yeah. Okay. So let's provide a ballpark. Just for like the basic person. Let's not get
I just realized I did not answer your question, did I?
Not really. So I'm going to talk about the basics then. Okay. Ideally, during the first quarantine, actually, Ron Partlow and Dusty Hanshaw, I had spoken to them and they gave me some great advice. So like, if you're in quarantine right now and you're actually in a prep and you're serious and you want to be competitive at the regional or national level, they broke down exactly what to get. And they were very, very honest about it. They're like, if you want to keep progressing, whether you're male or female, like spend like $300 to $400 on a rack. It doesn't have to be like the full power rack. You can get just a half rack, so you can do squats on it. Make sure it has a pull-up bar, and of course, make sure you have an adjustable bench. So $300 to $400 on a rack. That's one thing. Then you get yourself a barbell. It's another $200 to $300, depending what you want. $200 for a basic one. So we're now at roughly $600. If you just want to keep it light, you can get a pair of plates for $200. So we're still under $1,000 right now. Okay, we're still under 1,000. Now, you want the bench. Depending on how much the bench costs, I mean, we're just up to about $1,200. So ideally, what I think is, if you are on a prep, you want to keep doing what you're doing, you want to keep progressing. If you have roughly about $2,000, you should be able to almost buy everything you need, if not have everything you need, to be able to do most things. Right?
Absolutely. So if you were like, okay, if you had to pick the absolute minimum for you to make your training work, I would completely agree with that. Power rack, Olympic barbell, as many places as you can, and the bench, right? Because with the bench, then you can get different angles for multiple exercises as well. Barbell work is going to go a long way. I mean, it's not, of course, ideal, but we're making the most out of something. Now, the problem is that for some people, even 1,200, they either don't or can't make it happen, unfortunately, right? So that's where, we're running into quite a few limitations, because, again, as a coach, of course, this is the third lockdown that I have to deal with this particular type of situation in which the gyms get closed, and every single client has different access or a different variety of equipment. So, you're not like, I'm not gonna try to make them or force them to buy stuff if it's just not within their means or even their will, right? Like, I let them know, the more you're able to invest, the more you're going to be able to get out of it. But I think in a lot of cases, it's about the uncertainty, because they are thinking likely, oh, they said we're going to get shut down for 3 weeks. So do I want to invest this type of money for only 3 weeks? When in reality, by now, being lockdown experts by now, all of us, we know that, in most cases, you get told a specific time frame and it gets being doubled or tripled. So, it's just interesting. It depends on, again, what is their level, what are they willing to do, how driven they currently are. As a coach, you have also a responsibility to make them realize what is possible, what are their options, what is within their means, and try to bring out the best in them. But at the same time, they're only going to be able to do what they're going to be able to do. So it's depends on the person. It depends on the approach.
So there are many cost-effective ways to be able to do this as well. Many cost-effective ways. So for the people that are listening, for example, that want to do this, but you're living tight on a budget and you actually want to purchase equipment, there is a guy on Facebook Marketplace that some of Humberto's athletes, I should say, some of my teammates have used to make concrete weight plates. He reinforces them with rebar, paints them black, and they're half the cost. He'll make you a set of 45-pound plates for $80. That's one thing. I have another friend who's a carpenter, and he's more than happy to make people benches that are adjustable. If you want his information, I'm not going to put it on here, but you can hit me up and I'll pass it along. And it's probably a third of the cost of what you're going to spend on a bench. The barbell, you're kind of on your own. You got to do that. But I'm just saying, like, there are ways to get around it. There are ways. And me personally, I'll be the first one to tell you that I fucked up because every time the gym's open, I sold all my shit thinking that, oh, it's not going to happen again. I've learned better. Third time.
So listen, like every time, once in a while I get bored, I go on Facebook Marketplace. So here I am one day, just checking, scrolling down, seeing what's up. And then I'm like, that squat rack and barbell looks familiar. And then I click on the ad and I said, if you're interested, message Byron.
I remember the reply. You're
I thought I told you better.
What's that?
I thought I told you better, son. I'm disappointed.
Didn't teach me shit. No, honestly, man, before this third lockdown, we had 2 sets of restrictions come into play. The first time, like, the gyms are fucked. And they were safe. Right? Then the second set of restrictions came in. And I was like, the gyms are fucked for sure. And then it was like, no, we just need to stay 9 feet apart. And like, it survived 2 rounds.
9 feet.
It survived 2 rounds, right? And then the next Friday comes and there's all of us sitting at a Talo. And of course, a certain someone goes, there's new restrictions coming out tonight. And we're like, don't fucking swear at us like that. And I'm like, it'll be fine. We already survived 2 rounds. Third time was a charm. Back to square one. I should have known better.
I know. And of course, every single time there's the element of hope. But at one point you're like, okay, should I be hopeful still, or should I be a little bit more realistic? I've been prepared for the third lockdown since the very first time I saw the possibility of it on social media, which was like shortly after the beginning of January. I think, the more prepared. This is another thing that, with some clients, especially prepping for all these shows, some clients, it almost try to avoid talking about the subject. And this is just a specific type of thinking that I don't believe is in anyone's best interest. You're just delaying the inevitable. Is going to catch on to you. And I can sense it. I kind of started a conversation. I kind of want to start a conversation. So in the event, the inevitable, now we know happens, if a show gets postponed or whatever, it's going to still suck because you are considering the possibility of it. But I find that if you have that hard conversation, because it's hard to really, especially if you've been prepping for a while, you're so invested, even thinking about the possibility of your prep or this show being pushed for like what, 4 more months, it hurts, man. Like, for some people, it may be devastating. It makes them feel very, very low, very, very disappointed. Anyways, and I can tell some people, yes, they want to address the situation right off the bat. Some others, they either don't answer right away, or when they answer, they don't even answer the question. They just say something else. So I can sense that they're avoiding the subject because it's something they don't want to talk about it, whether they're being overly hopeful or they don't want to jinx it or whatever the case is. But I think the smartest approach and the best approach is to be prepared. Expect the best, but be prepared for the worst, because so far that's, it hasn't been the best in the most ideal scenario and circumstances. You have to be, I think. And another thing too, and this is my opinion, of course, but I find that I've seen some people be seemingly affected mentally or otherwise, the same from the first lockdown all the way to the third lockdown. So I'm sorry, but I can't help but think, didn't you learn shit? Like, have you not become a stronger person until then? Like, what happened from the first lockdown until now that you are affected the exact same way? You post this same type of sad stuff of how bad you feel about it. Like, by now you should be a lot more resilient, a lot stronger. You've been through already 2 lockdowns. The third one shouldn't even face you, in my opinion. Because if you didn't learn, you didn't grow from that bad experience, then what the hell are you doing? You just went by. I don't know.
I can, you know what? I can touch on this one. I was kind of emotional for the first 3 or 4 days.
Mhm.
Didn't really post much. I was very angry, but most of it had to do with I was angry at myself because I had sold all my shit, and so so it wasn't like I was angry about the third lockdown. It was just more like I was like,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
can't believe I fucked myself like this. But now we're fine. We're fine. We're good this week. Made a lot of purchases, but there was a moment where I was being a little bitch and I was being very upset. And people are like, "Oh, is it the COVID?" I'm like, "No, it's not. It's not the COVID. It's what I did that fucked myself for this situation." But now I'm good. We're good. Everybody else, though, yes. If you're still depressed because it's the third lockdown, like you got to get over it.
Yeah, I don't mean to be, rude or I just don't understand why you allow yourself to be affected by it the same way. We are designed to evolve and adapt, and by being affected worse or the same even, you're proving that you're not adapting, you're not evolving, you didn't learn anything along the way.
Just remember, in these scenarios, the hardships will make or break you. And people take that really lightly, but it's true, right? You are meant to become a product of your environment. You are meant to adapt, like we just talked about, and overcome it, or surpass whatever you are, whether it's your maturity level, your physical level. You're meant to surpass those things so you can survive. Humans are meant to adapt to every situation, no matter what it is. But it's either that you adapt in a way that makes you stronger, or you adapt in a way where you become complacent and you become broken and weak. So I can only speak from personal experience. I've been through this shit way too many fucking times in my life. But some people haven't. Some people are so sheltered that this is brand new to them. Some people are still in fucking denial, thinking that, you know, this shit will last forever. And mind you, you know what? COVID might become a yearly booster shot. You never know. It might become a yearly booster shot. I don't fucking know. It might become a passport thing. But what I can tell you is this: if you are still obsessing, this is now going into the better part of a year and a half soon of being on and off of restrictions and the pandemic. This isn't going away anytime soon. It's not. So you got to get comfortable with the fact that this could reoccur again. We joke about it. You've made a meme before I've seen where it's like, we're now in the 9th wave. It's 2024. But the fucking reality of it is you don't know what life brings tomorrow. You can't be scared. Just fucking get over it, adapt, do what you can, and continue your life normally. It is
The
what
point,
it is.
absolutely. And the point I think is, even if by now you haven't changed your ways and your mindset and your psychological approach to adversity, there is no guarantee that this is or similar scenarios in your life are not going to present themselves in the future. So the question is, what are you doing right now to be better prepared, to evolve, to adapt, and become a stronger person mentally, physically, every single other aspect in your life, to be prepared for this situation that is likely going to, I'm not saying specifically a lockdown or whatever, but it's the response to adversity, the response to something that is less than ideal, right? So if you don't start to work on that right now, you're going to trip over with the same rock every single time. So
I'm gonna give people a bit of advice, a little bit. Instead of looking at it like, because I know a lot of people do this, instead of looking at it like, oh, I just need to make it 3 more weeks to hear the new announcement about the restrictions. Stop paying attention to the news. Honestly, stop. You're gonna make yourself sick mentally. Just live your life one day at a time. Because every good day that you have, whether you're like an athlete or you're not an athlete, right? But as long as you have the will to work towards making that one day good, the next day will become easier, and so on and so forth. You'll become more positive, you'll become a little bit more relaxed, and you won't obsess with the current situation. I think.
I agree. It's being less reactive and more proactive, if you will.
100%. Okay, we got really, we like, if here's the rabbit hole, we shot down that thing. And this is meant to be completely just about budgeting on prep. We're going to bring it back to what we were talking about now. We're going to bring it right back. Okay. So if you were to give someone a budget to prep at home, roughly, let's say,
You and your numbers, man. I don't.
Oh my God. I'm just trying to prepare these young kids. These young kids
Okay,
are working minimum wage jobs,
yeah.
trying to become athletes.
Okay, proceed.
Thank you, sir. What does the average person need to have in the bank so that they can buy the shit to work out at home? Is how much? $2,000, $3,000?
As the bare minimum?
Yeah, to buy the shit they need at home. Don't include something for cardio. It's summer. They can run outside.
I'm gonna give you a number, and this is based on my experience and based on the level of skill that you have to look for deals.
Okay.
I'm gonna say that's 90, 200, 900.
That's it.
With 900, I was able to get a power rack, incline, decline, flat bench, an Olympic barbell, and a couple of 45s.
Where the fuck did you get all that for $900?
You are Latino as well, my friend. You should know our ways.
No. I have my ways and you have your ways. Okay, what I bought, it would cost the average person probably $3,000 to $4,000. So my question to you is, what advice do you have for someone who doesn't have the hookups or who doesn't know where to look? Because I could put links in the bio. I could put Flamin Fitness, a couple people who they could contact for all these kind of things.
Full disclosure, basically these prices I was able to get because I reacted immediately. I didn't wait. And again, I owe this to my wife because she's the one that said, you know what, let's just get as much as we can, where I was just going to get a couple things. I was just going to get bands. I think I was in denial, but once she mentioned that, we looked online and the power rack that we got it for $300. So because the prices then were just the regular prices back then, cheaper in all senses, as the demand increased and as people started to really need more and more this equipment, the price of course went up and the price changed. But when we because we acted a little bit sooner, we were able to get these deals. So there is an element of timing as well. It's an element of how often you check things. There's an element whether you have them, you're ready to, once you find it, to get it, because sometimes you're checking, and then it's available and it's cheap. And you're like, should I? But you have to be ready. Otherwise, you're going to lose some, that good sale, and then you're going to regret it later, potentially.
You're at that fitness or the power rack off Fitness Avenue, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But right now, the power rack is like $400 or $500, I think.
It's still $300. The same one you have is $300.
Is it?
Yeah.
So
for those of you that need a power rack, it's still $300 off Fitness Avenue. You just have to be prepared to pay the shipping.
Mm-hmm.
Make it count. But yeah, that one is still $300. A bench right now, man. You know what's crazy? I'm just gonna give you the analogy. The way that they're selling fitness equipment right now, no matter where you go, is the equivalent to the worth of drugs in prison. So I'll give you an example. 1 gram of cocaine in prison is 10 times the value of it on the street. 1 gram of marijuana is 10 times the value of it out here. So if you pay $10 for a gram out here, you're paying $100 for a gram in prison.
Okay, so question, is there a gym in prison?
Absolutely. Where do you think I started working out?
Okay, so there you go. That's your cheapest approach.
Oh, fuck off. Yeah. Hey, guys, go get caught. Go get caught selling drugs. It's an automatic 2 years plus a day. You'll come out there buff as hell. Jacked and probably covered in tattoos. That's where I got all mine.
No kidding. I would never have guessed.
Fuck you, man. What are you trying to say?
I'm kidding.
No, you're not. Anyways, don't mind my co-host's sarcasm. That's what we feed off around here. Sarcasm and black coffee, guys. Back to the task at hand. Okay, so if he's saying $900, realistically, it's probably actually almost the same, minus the cost of 45s, because the cost of 45-pound plates right now are a little crazy. The real thing, obviously, you're paying $2 or $2.50 per pound. So you really got to do your homework and find what works for you. Some people like the metal ones, some people like the rubber ones. If they're the rubber ones, you're going to pay more no matter what, I think. But there are ways. So with that being said, I will turn it back to you, Humberto. Do you have more that you'd like to elaborate on when it comes to these topics, as we just keep getting way too carried away?
No, you know what? I wanted to talk about this because I found it was a relevant topic since I just started my prep this year. Um, even despite the lockdown and whatnot, this is something that I love so much that I just want to keep doing for as long as I can. Now, of course, I have to be a little bit more careful with the timing and the timeline and the shows that I pick because I have to balance that with the shows that my clients are doing, and I want to ensure that neither gets affected, whether it's my prep nor my clients' preps, right? So these are topics that of course cross my mind, and that this is something that I am coaching myself this time around. So I am an advantage of it is that I am in control of absolutely every single variable, every single thing and element within the program. So I design my own training program, my own nutrition plan, supplement protocol, and everything else. I it's gotten me, this is now the 17th prep that I'm going to be doing, so it's gotten me this long to feel confident enough to be able to coach myself despite the emotional roller coaster and the ups and downs and the bias that you get when you're feeling tired. You always feel like you're looking like crap when in reality you look not that bad. So there's that vision that is skewed slightly when you're prepping yourself and you have to really assess what you're seeing, right? So I'm very excited to apply everything that I learned even from last year's prep with Patrick, and every single time that I start a prep, especially if I do it on my own, I sit down and I just review every single thing that I've learned from every single coach and every single prep, and I put it together to come up with the most optimal possible plan. In your plan, if there's something that doesn't really have a reason or it's not as carefully thought of, you should review it. And if it's not necessary, sometimes less is more. So every single exercise I picked is based on not necessarily my own preference on what I like the most, but rather what is going to elicit the most growth and response in the muscle. A lot of these exercises are really tough exercises and hard exercises, but in my mind, if it's what's going to create the best physique that I could possibly bring for my next show, then it has to be in. Same with the diet. I selected the elements that I know work for me, the timing of the elements, what's more easily digestible for me before training, after training, what is the best meal that I could have before going to bed. Every single element has been selected carefully so I can bring the best possible version that I've ever brought into to a stage ever, and so far. So, it's very exciting. I'm not disclosing that.
Okay. Last question, then. Would you travel during a prep, or only if you absolutely had to? I'm not talking for a show, just in general. Would you ever travel somewhere on a prep?
Well, this time around, I'm going to have to travel multiple times, actually.
I realize this, but I'm saying in general, when you're not on a prep, like let's say you're on a prep, but I'm not talking traveling to the destination of the show. Would you just travel during the prep if you had the opportunity?
No, absolutely not.
Not a chance. Figures.
No, anything that throws me off my structure and environment and habits that I've very carefully selected and set up, I would say no, unless it's an obligation. And the way I see it as an obligation is a show that I have multiple clients that I would definitely like to be there for them. Pro qualifiers if I have 3 or more clients. And this year we postponed the show that I am promoting for September 25th. So this is going to be a number of weeks. It's going to be within the prep. It's going to be a number of weeks before the show that I'm going to be doing. So it's
a lot all at once.
It's a lot at once. It's going to become overwhelming. I mean, I am prepared to. My goal is to, be ahead. So those couple of days that I'm going to have to devote 100% to the show that I'm running, that they don't affect my prep. It's going to be it's going to be interesting, kind of adapting for the other at least 2 shows that I'm going to have to be traveling within my prep. Not the one in Cancun, but pro qualifiers and this one regional, because the things that that are going to change when you travel. You have to take a look at whether you can get the exact same elements in your diet, whether you have access to a good enough gym. These are things that you have to, obviously there's going to be a different gym. So the first time you work out there is going to be a learning experience, because you have to find your way and what's there. Does this feel right? Is this a good machine? So you're trying to get as close as possible to the approach that I am currently doing here at home in my basement, right? So yeah, it's very interesting. But you know what? Like if you got to think about it, like, a lot of the pros, they have to adapt and become these type of athletes that travel all around the world, and they have to be still doing what they love to do, and they have to do despite of the change of environment, right? So that's the way I see it.
Florida basically became like, the hub, the hot spot for all bodybuilders now, right? In the States,
Yeah.
anyway.
And a lot of the shows are taking place there.
Yeah. Like what, 3 of them already so far? Indie Pro, New York Pro, and then soon to be Tampa Pro.
And the Olympia.
Yeah, and the Olympia, yeah.
So, yeah.
Interesting things. Okay. I feel like I had one more thing to talk about, but I don't remember. So I'll save it for the next podcast. With that being said, though, guys, we are going to bring this episode to a close. I want to thank each and every one of you. Keep your eyes peeled. I'm sure at some point we'll start looking into a manufacturer for the clothing that we had talked about sooner than later, maybe. And of course, like always, if you like our content, like, share, subscribe. We are on Spotify, YouTube. Just hit the bio or the link in the bio for the link tree and enjoy. Anything you want to say, Humberto, on the way out?
No, thank you for listening, guys. And, hopefully a couple of the things that we said today resonated. That's always the goal, to help you guys in how to think and how to approach certain aspects in this sport and in life in general. So yeah, thank you for listening, and until the next one.
Of course. Oh, and before I go, guys, we will get our editor to throw a couple links in the bio for different places you can buy some fitness equipment from if you need it. But with that being said, guys, you take care of yourselves, and we will see you next Monday.